We'll start that recording right now. Thank you, Veronica. Veronica, my fantastic co-host, always helping me out. We are a 75-year-old nonprofit civic association. As a nonprofit, we encourage everyone to become a member, which can easily be done through our website. There are several benefits of being a member, one of which is being notified of all proposed zoning changes within our area. CCRA is the recognized registered community organization, RCO, for our area. Our boundaries are from South Street to JFK and Broad Street to the Schuylkill River. Our committee works as follows. First, applicants are to present. We ask applicants to address the specific refusal or referral. We ask for no interruptions as applicants give their full presentation. After the presentation, the zoning committee will first have a chance to ask questions. After the zoning committee's questions are completed, we open the meeting to the community. When addressed, we ask that you state your name and address. We ask that you keep your questions succinct and to the variance being discussed. We also ask that people not repeat others' questions. If you agree with someone's position, you are welcome to raise your hand and simply state that you agree. If there's a spokesperson for the neighbors, we ask that this person raise their hand and speak for the group. After we hear from all applicants and listen to the community comments, our committee will then meet in a closed session. And we always vote in one of three ways: oppose, not oppose, or not oppose with provisos. CCRA never votes in favor of any application. Our decision is emailed to the councilperson, the ZBA, and the applicant, and we also post it on the CCRA website. What's very important to note is that no matter how we decide, if you're concerned with a project, we strongly recommend that you attend the ZBA hearing. This is the best way to make your concerns known. The CCRA zoning committee cannot express the neighbor's point of view. Only a property owner or aggrieved individual can express their personal concern to the ZBA. And with that said, we have two applicants today on the agenda. And our first applicant is, it is 1413 Lombard Street. So I would introduce them to go ahead and present their case for the zoning refusal of today. Is the applicant for 1413 Lombard the present today? I have
there. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, great. Hi,
good evening. Bill Dion here for the applicant. I'm with the law firm of Silverang, Rosenzweig, and Holtzman. I think our application is just fairly straightforward. So the property itself is at 1413 Lombard Street. The owner and the applicant is Lombard Street Investors, who's been the owner since 2014. And this evening, Darren Tan is with me this evening representing the owners. The current use of the property is for 4 rental units, and that's been that way since the late 1980s or the early 1990s. We're not exactly sure of the exact date, but it looks to the best we can decipher late 80s, early 90s. The property is zoned in the RM1 district, and in that district, in order to have 4 rental units, the ordinance requires 1,440 square feet for 4 rental units. Unfortunately, our property has 1,394 square feet. So we are 46 square feet short of being legally permissible to have 4 rental units. Obviously, we've had 4 rental units in the property long before we purchased it. And after we purchased it, it's been 4 rental units ever since that. It wasn't until recently that we went to renew a rental license that the city L&I department informed us, because previous rental licenses had been issued for the property and this issue had never arisen. But in the most recent rental license renewal, the L&I department informed us that the property was not permitted for 4 rental units. Initially, through the discussions with the city, it was thought to believe that the property was non-conforming since it had been rented for 4 rental units for so long. But I guess it was uncovered that there was an old zoning decision from 1978. And that zoning decision allowed 3 rental units and an office, a tailor shop, and an optometrist on the first floor. And because that had been granted in 1978, the city would not recognize our nonconformity, I guess, claim. And they said that we needed to obtain zoning relief. So we are seeking that zoning relief and want to keep the property exactly the way it is today. We intend to keep 4 tenants in the building. There's no improvements planned. We have been remodeling some of the units since we originally purchased it in 2014, but want to continue to use it the way we have been and ultimately want to get a rental license so we can bring it in compliance with the city's ordinances. That's what brings us here today. It's fairly short and sweet and simple. If there's any questions of me or Darren Tan that relate to the property, we can answer those, but we're seeking, I guess, not your support, your non-objection to the application. So that's all I have to present.
Great. Well, thank you. That was very, very clear. First, I'll just ask if there is anybody from the zoning committee that would like to ask a question or has a comment for the applicant. Okay, fantastic. Is there anybody from the community that would like to ask a question or comment to the applicant? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Should we just unmute so?
Oh, sorry. I think that is fine. So
Okay.
if you could also just, if you do use the little raise hand function, I can call on you, but I see you're the Alex, go ahead if you don't
I
mind.
found the raise hand button. I apologize.
No worries. I just didn't think anybody had any questions. If you just want to tell us your name and address, please, that would be fantastic.
Yes, my name is Alexander Roeder. I live at 412 South Carlisle Street, which is right around the corner from the property in question. And I was just going to quickly comment that I'm strongly in support of the zoning, the folks getting the zoning variance. I think it's great to have one more neighbor and not one less neighbors, especially since the property is already being used for 4 units. And it's just a few square footage off. I see no reason to kick someone out of our neighborhood for that reason. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, well, that was very straightforward. If nobody else has any other comments, we can just move right on to the next case, which is 325 South 18th Street.
Veronica, thank you very much. I appreciate the board's time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, go ahead. I believe this is Sean.
Yes, hi, good evening. Sean Whalen here from Vintage Law on behalf of the equitable owner at 325 South 18th Street. I have a representative of the equitable owner and our architect on to be able to answer any questions. Thankfully, we also have a fairly straightforward application for you this evening. Am I allowed to share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right. So hopefully now you can see 2 renderings side by side.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the corner of 18th and Delancey. You have what you can see on the right-hand side, the frontage along South 18th. That is obviously there's been a long history with this property, and we are seeking to just kind of rejuvenate and rehabilitate this single-family house into a single-family house for a new owner, going forward. Again, this, I think the easiest way to describe it is through the renderings. We have all the documentation to walk you through it too. This front portion right here is 4 stories. That is original from 1865-ish. That's going to remain as is. Obviously, you can see, and I'll show you photos of the property now. We're showing it with new windows, etc. The middle portion of the property is going to stay as currently built, but get rehabilitated and refurnished. And then here you can see, this is the back portion. This portion will be, the existing portion of it will be torn down. And this is a new 3-story portion that's actually going to be about 8.5 feet shorter than what is there currently, to be in the rear. And then we are proposing parking off of Delancey, and this will lead directly into the refusals. But this image right here will be the easiest way to understand the refusals. So again, just right here, right at the corner of east of Delancey and South 18th, entirely RM1 zoning district. Even though we're allowed 3 units, this is single family, or at least it has historically been single family, and we are looking to keep it as a single family home. So what you have here, this is the present frontage. You can see actually the posting. We'll be putting windows in and everything, and the equitable owner has gone through with historic commission staff and shown them all the plans and everything we're showing you now, and walked through with kind of an understanding of approval once this project is freed up and ready to move forward. So again, you just can now see the length of the property going back on Delancey. Here is that bump out that I was talking about, and sort of roughly the middle third. So everything to the right here, this is what fronts onto South 18th. That will remain unchanged, just be spruced up a bit with new windows and whatnot, like I said. This bump out here will be maintained, but it will be refinished, as you saw in the rendering. This portion in the rear is what's not original and not even, so this middle portion dates back to at least pre-1900. This latter portion does not. It also has this brand new or newer bump out. This is all going to be demolished and reduced again about 8.5 feet, and then have a new 3-story build there. So that kind of gives you a better view. So basically you'll drop from the top of this roof line down to the bottom of the roof line in height as proposed. This is currently the open area at the corner, and what we're intending to do, this is Bouvier Street. Going here, you can see probably the bollards that everyone's familiar with. Very tight street right here. Technically a legally open street, but very tight street, and didn't seem appropriate for, and you can see all these bollards are actually leaning for additional cars. So we are looking to put the parking off of Delancey. There will be a almost a carport set up here. You can see it here. Access off of Delancey with an opaque gate frontage, and then there will be a brick wall about 8 feet high, focused at the corner of Bouvier Street. And then this just shows you that's how tight, and most of you are probably familiar with Bouvier Street, but that's how tight it is. And just getting additional parking in and off of Bouvier Street was not appropriate. And again, the equitable owner has already walked through this with the streets department and whatnot. And while they cannot take an official position as to what they prefer, what would be better or worse, they said that it was more advisable to have parking accessed off of Delancey. So I will get to that in just a second. So what you can see now, there is no parking on the north side of Delancey, on street parking that is. And what you can see is this is what would be immediately across the street at the, from where the parking would be. The parking would be right here at the D. So we'd be mirroring what was across the street. And again, just an image to show how tight this angle is. So again, we have, this is our refusal. We have several refusals, one for the balcony, one is for the fencing that I already showed you. Technically, the L&I reviews this back area here, and I can zoom in for everyone. L&I reviews this back area, even though it's going to have parking. What we're trying to do is set it up as a garden with an actual separate pedestrian access here. This fence here, since it is along Delancey Street, L&I says that fence can only be 4 feet because it considers it a garden fence and not a fence, basically not a decorative garage door. And it's because we're putting this brick wall here as the side wall to the outdoor space, that is being considered as a no longer open space. So that is the occupied area issue. L&I is reviewing that as fully occupied space since we're building out that wall and having that parking there. And then lastly, you have accessory parking is not allowed off of Delancey Street. It would be allowed by right off of Bouvier Street. But again, as I already walked through, and I don't want to belabor the issue, the turning radius and the small size of Bouvier Street, it doesn't really warrant additional car traffic to be going down along that street. And then the final refusal we have is for the balconies. You can see here, we have a balcony off the back. That balcony is allowed to be, it's been existing historically. It has a 4-foot in depth cover there. And we're actually proposing an 8-foot balcony there to have actually usable outdoor space, whereas a small 4-foot balcony, unfortunately, in reality, just gets used as kind of outdoor storage because it's not really large enough to have a viable use for the homeowner. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And like I said, I have for any and all questions, we have the architect here to walk through some of the details that I obviously glossed over, and also have Liz Scott here on behalf of the equitable owner of the property, and she can answer any and all questions you have about the construction, the development, and where things stand. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean. Very thorough presentation. Ben Zuckerman from our committee, why don't you go ahead, please?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this property. This has been sitting there vacant and kind of decaying for years and years. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, it has.
Are these new owners?
So, and maybe I should have gone into this at first. For those of you not familiar, there is a state act called Act 135, by and through which a nonprofit can take a property to court and begin essentially a litigation against the property to say that the property is blighted and derelict, and excuse me, and have the ability to have that property fixed up. My client tonight has the property under an agreement of sale and is therefore the equitable owner. They are recognized by the court and the judge as the equitable owner of the property, but they cannot close on the property until the Act 135 case is resolved or moved further along. And so we are not involved in the Act 135 case. And that is proceeding in front of a judge, in front of the Court of Common Pleas here in Philadelphia. And once that's resolved, we'll be able to proceed, hopefully, with your support or non-opposition with this single-family home kind of rejuvenation. Because as you've said, this property's been, long vacant for decades and not really brought to full use.
Yeah, I was under the impression there was litigation over the years against whoever was the owner, but that is not your client. Is that correct?
No, this is a new entity that has the property under agreement of sale once it comes out from that Act 135 case.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. If no other committee member has, I don't have the function to raise my hand as co-host. Thank you for that presentation, Sean. Can you just clarify for us, the allowed lot coverage is 80% and you're proposing 90%. And that extra 10 or 99%, I believe, and that extra coverage, that is exclusively for the garage spaces, is that correct?
Yes, so what we have, and I guess I can zoom in here again for you. So hopefully this is large enough now. So we've tried to set up a small garden area out back here, and then we have covered the parking in the rear. Because that is covered, none of this back area, and the garden area back here is covered by the balcony. None of this rear area is considered open space. And so that's why we have 0.6% open space. But yes, the lack of open space from 80% to what we're proposing at 99% is this this kind of decorative garage, I will call it.
Understood. And so the portion over the car has a roof, but the garden is covered by the balcony.
Correct.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ben Weinrob, sorry. You can unmute yourself, Ben. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, trying to find the button. The question I have was with regards to the parking. I understand the building. Great that hopefully you get control and can do this. Again, I understand that it's a narrow street on Bouvier, but it says 20 feet wide, plus you have the width of a sidewalk. And there's a lot smaller streets that have parking without getting rid of off-street or on-street parking, which is really the city's goal, versus being on Delancey and killing, 2 parking spots in order to make this happen?
So excellent question, and something I glossed over, and I apologize. So first of all, you can see these bollards on Bouvier Street. So, and if you go out here, this is not 20 feet wide, right? I mean, if you want me to, I can go back out there tomorrow. I'll take a tape measure.
I'm going off your drawings. I'm sorry. I'm not.
No, you're absolutely correct, but that's just property line to property line.
Yep. Includes the sidewalks as with. Sorry, Sean. But yeah.
No, actually, I was just going to call you, Ben. Could you introduce yourself and answer the question, because it's a good one.
Yeah, I'm Ben Estepani. I'm the architect for the project. The 20 Street, just like as Sean was saying, the 20-foot wide is from property line to property line, so it includes the width of the sidewalk. So the street is 6'6" wide, and then with turning radius required by streets department, you're just not able to make that turn safely from the rear yard to Bouvier Street. So that's why we oriented it towards Delancey Street.
But the rest of that row of 18th has parking in the back along Bouvier. I know it's not ideal.
I don't want to call anybody out, but I will suggest it might be of questionable legality.
Understood. All right, and my second part of the question is, I see existing tree pit to remain. I assume you're keeping the mature tree that's there. And is there any ability to add anything? Because I'm on our greening committee and trying to see if there's a spot we could add a tree along Delancey or two. Is it something that you'd entertain?
Liz Scott at OCF,
Yeah.
why don't you answer that?
I'm happy to jump in. First, by introduction, my name is Liz Scott. I am an agent at OCF Realty. I am one of the partners in the equitable ownership of the property. And I think the simple answer is we are absolutely, well, so first part, yes, we are keeping the mature trees in place. They're at the front of the building where we don't have extensive exterior work to do other than window installation. As far as additional, I say this every time someone asks for one, I am absolutely willing to put additional trees in. The city and the streets department's zero vision plan makes tree sighting quite difficult. So I guess the simplest answer is we are willing to explore that. We did meet with streets already to discuss the curb cut and just I'm pressed to say whether or not I know we can fit another tree in that area, but I don't have any reason to say no to it if permitted by Streets Department. I hope that's a clear enough and agreeable enough answer while still letting it be known that we have to get it permitted to put the tree in.
Thank you.
One quick follow-up, Mr. Weinraub, because I didn't address it yet. Hopefully you guys can see a picture here. I thought I had one from another angle. You talked about on-street parking. This post right here, and again, I apologize, I can't get to it from the other angle quickly, is a no parking anytime sign for the rest of this block. So our parking would actually go, our parking access would actually go right there. So you're not losing, you're actually only losing, one space, basically a little less than one total space, but obviously you can't park in less than one space. So you're only losing one on-street parking space. And in order to allow for that tight turn, as we've discussed from Streets Department and whatnot, essentially where everyone has to drive over this curb onto the sidewalk and then down Bouvier.
Hi, this is Ron Schiller. I have a question.
I think we want to do
to everybody in the committee first. Yeah,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
bear with me. Sorry, we have one more Bob Lane from the committee. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rebecca. First of all, I live not far from here, and I really applaud any effort to get this derelict property, which has been, and many of us know the story, for derelict for many years. However, to put that parking space on the corner of 18th and Delancey, I think is a real violation of the aesthetics of that block. And I look at Bouvier Street, and I heard everything you said, and I understand real estate, but if you want to put back that picture of Bouvier Street, you would take down those bollards, and you have the benefit of being on a corner. So it would be no problem for the owners of that building to park coming in from Bouvier Street and having the building go out to Delancey with a street cut with a building line that's consistent with Delancey Street. The 1800 block of Delancey Street is one of our great blocks. And I think to have a corner with that parking space and beautiful fence would be a real violation of the aesthetics of that area, when I think you could very easily put it in the back. The turning radius on Bouvier is, you have the benefit of being on the corner. So when you take those bollards out, you can see the people halfway down the block can get their cars in. It certainly does not seem to be a hardship to be able to reorient your design. So that's my perception. I'd like to hear your response to that.
I'm happy to chime back in. I guess I would say, for starters, I walk this block pretty regularly. I live around the corner. There are 12 curb cuts and parking lots on this very block. Most of them are on the north side, but the mirror image of this house over at 17th also has a curb cut on Delancey. So I don't think it's out of character with the block. In fact, this is probably one of the more heavily garage fronted blocks in the area. Additionally, I live about a block away. I have a similar situation behind my house to, I don't know if we call it Bouvier or Bouvier in Center City, I'll be honest. In South Philly, they called it Bouvier. I'll go with Bouvier. But I park off of Waverly, which is also a 6.5 foot wide street. I park a single car into an area in the back, and I drive on my neighbor's sidewalk every time to park my car. The neighbor across the street has put up ballards. I also know my parking on Waverly is actually not legalized parking. The whole block has done it, and it is grandfathered parking. But in our meeting with the Streets Department, we discussed the need, our desire for parking and the need for it to be accessible and be by streets code, which is why we came up with what we did. Just as an additional tidbit, if we did this as a triplex, which is by right, the parking is also by right. We're choosing to do a single family home here because we think it's the best use of the property, but we're surrounded by condos, and a condo could get by right parking here just as easily. So
That's a good response. I thank you very much for
thanks.
the explanation. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Douglas, did you have anything to ask? Okay, sorry, I thought I saw your hand raised. I guess I want to just get a little clarity on the hardship of needing to cover so much of the lot. If you could kind of speak to that, and maybe if there's a way that you can think of a green initiative to help compensate for that. It seems like a pretty large lot. I just, if you could just clarify the need for the extra coverage.
Certainly. So, again, with the extra coverage, we could do something artificial, like remove the low roof line over the parking and therefore cure that. Although, that would sort of be artificial. As far as a greening standard, we are more than happy to work. I think Ms. Scott already stated this. We would like as many trees as possible on Delancey. Again, the issue with trees, and we never want to hear it on the development side, and neighbors never want to hear it, is that streets and water department have the final say as to what kind of infrastructure is under the sidewalk, under the streets, where you're allowed to put sidewalks or tree pits in the sidewalk. So we, absolutely hope to put more. We're keeping the one there. We can also use permeable pavers in the garden area. I mean, it is covered a bit, but we do think that, again, if you look at see if I can get there quickly. The general sense of this block is, 100% pavement or coverage of some type, if not, be it an actual garage immediately across from us, or just full pavement. So we are hoping and trying to get a better outcome than that, and do, again, kind of a garden setting without, we're not suggesting and do not want to put, a solid garage door there or anything of the sort. Ms. Scott, do you have anything to add as to?
Not specifically. I mean, I think you nailed it. The goal is for this to feel like it's a rear yard garden, but obviously accommodate the parking needs of 21st century. We, as Sean said, we could do pervious pavers. We could handle even the stormwater runoff from just that sloped roof section through like a rain barrel system, and keep the water on site. Beyond that, we said happy to do whatever greening we can actually accommodate on the property, as permitted by Streets Department.
And also one kind of final point, just as far as the lot coverage, because I know there was even a question earlier about it.
This has been Stephanie, the
architect again. The new portion of the addition, the end of it aligns with where the existing building ends now, that portion. So we're not extending the addition. The lot coverage confusion, I guess, lot coverage increases because of the roof over it and the balcony over the rear yard. So, we are proposing central yard drain, so the water is not sheeting off onto, over the sidewalk and out into the public right away. So, just wanted to kind of at least show that the massing of the building isn't contributing to it. It's the small kind of parts where we're trying to conceal the parking and provide some extra outdoor space that's causing the increase in lot coverage.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. I don't think anybody else from the committee has their hand raised. So I'm just going to see if there's anybody from the neighborhood that would like to speak or has a question. I see Heather Matsey. If you'd like to state your name and address, go ahead. You're muted. If you could just unmute.
How's that? Is that better?
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, Heather's my support here at the office. I'm on her
Okay,
computer.
sorry, I didn't
My
want to
name-
make assumptions.
My name's Tony Rufo. And I just want to put it on the record that I am the equitable owner of that property. That property is deeded to 325 South 18th Street LLC. I am the sole owner of that entity. I had a question, I think, for both Sean and Liz. When they say that they are speaking for the equitable owner, who do they think the equitable owner is?
Sean, do you want to take that, or I'm happy to answer it.
Why, I would simply suggest, I'm happy to, get into legal discussion here if CCRA wants that. Separately, I would just suggest that, the ownership and title and who has rights to buy it is a question that's presently before the Court of Common Pleas and a Philadelphia judge.
Well, if I could say something, I was just heard there from Liz that the court recognizes your equitable owner that you guys are speaking for is the owner, and that is not true. The court recognizes 325 South 18th Street LLC as the equitable owner. So I just want that put on record. As far as legal discussion, that'll come later.
Totally understood, Mr. Rufo. Happy to discuss with you offline if you wanted. And, ownership and equitable ownership will be determined by the zoning board and the courts.
The courts. I wanted to make the point because both of these are misleading these people on the committee, everybody involved in this Zoom tonight. You're misleading that you were not the equitable owners. I wanted to make.
I'm happy to clarify one step further. So we made an offer on this property on the open market. It was listed on the MLS.
I'm not sure that this is a zoning matter. I think it's.
I'm happy to pass. Yep. Thanks.
So I'm a committee member and with your, Rebecca, I'm the lawyer on the committee. I'm not the lawyer for the committee, but this is a legal ownership issue that is before the courts. And frankly, I think that before we'll decide, we should get some input as to who is the applicant, who is recognized as the applicant, and who's the attorney for the applicant tonight? Is that you, Sean?
Yes, it is.
Sean, would you communicate with us tomorrow as to the status of the ownership and the court situation, so we know who we should address any decision to?
Of course, I absolutely will.
Yeah, our counsel is not, Wade, you're not here tonight, is that correct? Yeah, our counsel for our committee is not here, unfortunately, because he's running for office. So chirping up as the only lawyer on our committee. So if you would, Sean, if you would please let us know so that we don't make a decision with the wrong party and interest. Becca,
absolutely.
You could overrule me if you want.
Who would you like me to reach out to directly tomorrow?
Well, who do you communicate with CCRA? Ben, you're our secretary, Ben Zuckerman.
Yes, and also with the two co-chairs, I would think. Rebecca, would you agree?
Veronica and Rebecca.
I'd say the same communication that the application was sent to get on the agenda today would be.
Okay, perfect.
But if we have not heard from the real parties of interest, we should not render a decision yet.
You should not. I was never notified that this was even happening, and that's something that should have happened. Can I make one other comment, please?
Sure, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
In discussing the, let's say, the theme that these guys are coming in with this new build, and as far as dropping the large piece of the back of this house and constructing a new piece, they haven't touched on the width that they're proposing to make the new addition, which they call the real L. Perhaps the architect can comment on that a little bit, just for your guys' information.
I'm happy to address that. Oh, I lost my share screen. Just a second.
Well, I think that's an interesting point.
All right. So again, here's the rendering. The lot is 18 feet wide. And this one.
Perhaps if you showed it in plan, it would be more clear to these
Yeah,
people.
there you go. I'll let the architect go over the plans if you want, but this is, again, this is the width of the property. It's 18 feet wide. The build currently as it stands is 14 feet wide and approximately 42.5 feet tall. I don't know actually the width of this bump out, how far that would bring us out. Mr. Stephanie can advise on that. We are proposing the demolition of this whole rear portion here and the bump out. We are proposing to build to approximately 32 feet and 35 feet and to the full frontage along the street, the sidewalk here. So the full 18 feet in width, basically out to this line here.
Actually,
we're
Sean,
happy to have-
that extends beyond. It's the same width as the front of the building. The bay that you're pointing to in the background is wider.
Okay.
So this section becomes 4 feet wider.
Yeah,
Okay, so I
essentially
stand corrected.
to the edge of, essentially to the edge of this bay here, that's cantilevered over at the second floor where that mouse is hovering over. We'd
No,
be
the
extending the new
proposed is the
addition out to
width
that point.
of the middle of the building, not the front of the building.
No, it will be the width of the front of the building.
So the front of the building is remaining unchanged. The
We
middle
could do
portion, this bump out is remaining unchanged.
Site
And
plan.
we are
Yeah.
proposing to drop the height of this rear portion and to extend basically this party wall out to the width of the current bump out.
I'm sorry, this is Veronica Aplenc, I'm co-chair. I'm asking for a clarification. I think I've heard two different things. So will the width of this back portion, which what's currently there will be demolished, is that width the new piece the new addition that will be built? Will it be built to the width of the sidewalk, which is, I understand, a full 18 feet? Or will it be built just to the far edge of the bump out? And if that's the case, how wide would that be? Have I said that clearly?
You have, let me take a stab here. Ori Feibush, working with Liz on this project here. So the larger bump out that is closer to 18th Street, it actually extends well beyond 18 feet. And so what appears to be an 18-foot wide property is actually north of 20 feet. So the 18 feet that we're proposing on the rear would be the smaller, effectively one-story bump out that's on the rear. That is 18 feet there. So to the edge of what is currently that one-story bump out would be the extent of where we're taking it to, which would appear as if it's less than 18 feet because it looks shorter than the sidewalk. But that's only because the bump out that exists, that is 3 stories in height, is well beyond 18 feet, but has been existing obviously for many decades.
Got it, thank you. And so you'll extend it to the width of that bump out, which is basically the second part of the building, the middle part of the building. Is that right?
Exactly correct.
No, I'm sorry. That was no. That is not what I just heard. It will be actually.
I'm sorry
Ben,
to interrupt.
can we switch to the
We're
plan view?
going in circles until we look at a plan.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
that's what I was
Go
just
ahead
going to
and
say. So,
do that.
Thank you.
Ben, I apologize to the crowd for flipping quickly. Ben, is this the image you would
Yes.
want up?
Yes, so the
What do you want me
image
to zoom in on?
the image to the, maybe we can start the image to the right, just because we were looking at the photo, like the site plan to the right.
Okay, this sort of helpful.
Yep, so I'm gonna draw on here. So this bump out here is the red cantilevered portion that was bumping out in that image at the second floor. The edge of that is essentially the property line. And then this is the edge of the existing building here. The new addition is going to continue out just to the edge of the property line, like the front third of the building is. So you'll like the essentially, so Sean, if you can pan over to the next image or to the next site plan.
This way?
Yes. You can see here the property line. Let me see the draw. the property line and then the new addition at the rear will align. And then this is the 3-story bump out. That, again, has been existing for many decades, extends beyond the property line. So we're just pulling the new addition to the property line, and then the overall depth of the addition is going to match what is already there. So,
So Ben,
essentially,
how,
it's like essentially to be exact, 4 foot 9.5 inches extra in width we're going to get at the back.
so Ben, how far, if I'm standing at the edge of the middle bump out, the large full 3-story bump out, how far back is the new proposed portion going to be?
So for that bump out that comes in contact with the sidewalk, that 3-story bump out, the new back part is going to be 4 foot 9 back from that. You kind of see like in this dimension here, it's 4 foot 9 dimension.
I think that this clears it up for me. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, Rebecca?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to understand one thing, and I'm asking Mr. Rufo this. Are you opposed to this plan? Where do you stand on this? I understand there's a legal issue over who's the equitable owner, but are you here in opposition to this plan?
I think I'll hold my comments for now.
Okay.
If this is an historic property, what's the need to tear down the back half of it and rebuild? It's one question that might come through my head, but I'll punt on that one.
If I may, Mr. Zuckerman, Ori Fibush, this property went before the full historical commission and received unanimous approval at the historical commission for what we're proposing here.
But I was never notified that it was going before the Historic Society, so that's illegal right there.
Mr. Rufo, I respect.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Excuse me, I'm interrupting as co-chair. I'm sorry, Rebecca is chairing this meeting, but I just want to interrupt and I want to get us back on track. Thank you for that. I'd like to turn it back over to Rebecca now.
Goodbye.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess I would like to understand if there's anybody from the community that would like to react to this. And Veronica is just very trying to keep us on track to focus on zoning matters. So Kenneth, I know you've had your hand raised for a few minutes here. Kenneth Perkins, if you would like to unmute yourself and state your address and ask a question as related to zoning, that would be.
I have a very brief comment, and I thank you for recognizing me. I am an attorney of record for Mr. Rufo in the litigation that has been ensuing. I've known Mr. Rufo for some time, and I can tell you that everything that he has said about his status as owner is true. He is a substantial and renowned builder who's prepared to make this property perfect and has been prepared to do so for a long time. I know that the community is probably very tired of hearing about delays, and Mr. Rufo would be the first one and has the means to immediately make it better. He is the proper equitable owner of the property, and litigation continues. The only other thing I will say is this, that the suggestion by council on your zoning board that you shouldn't act until you know who you're dealing with only makes sense. Being mired in the details of any particular plan before the litigation is resolved as to proper ownership is just wasting your time. And I believe that if you need to get behind anybody, you need to get behind Mr. Rufo. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
I understand that, I do apologize, and I understand that this is not a zoning issue, but this is, I would be remiss in not just pressing that, we have not misrepresented the board anywhere. L&I has accepted our application. The Historical Commission has accepted our application. We've been proceeding in good faith and openly. The ZBA will be hearing this case next month. They can certainly hear any legal arguments that may arise that we are not who we say we are, but that's simply not the case. And there's no basis for CCRA or the zoning board to hold off during the pendency of Act 135. And I mean, frankly, this is the first plan for the revitalization of this project, of this property in 50 years.
Incorrect.
So for every reason, we should be
not
moving
true.
forward. And I do apologize for belaboring the point, but a lot had been said on the other side, and I was trying to remain quiet, but happy to keep that up at
Thank
the
you,
zoning
Sean.
board.
At this point, I'm just trying to keep us on track for the zoning matters, and I feel that it is it is relevant for us just to keep going, finalize, hearing the details. We're, I would say, 90% of the way through. Everyone's been able to ask questions, so that once that matter is clear, we are able to make a recommendation and not have to start from scratch. And that is how I think we should proceed. And that said, I think everybody from the committee has asked a question, and I see Ron Schiller is next to ask a question. If you could state your name and address, or I have your name and your address, please.
For me, Ron Schiller next. Okay. 1813 Delancey. I'm in the next block of Delancey Street. And I just had a question about the rendering. The rendering made it appear that it was a 2-car parking spot with some kind of sliding ornamental metal fence. But it sounds like it's a garage, right? And is it a garage or is it a parking spot? Because it's not clear, at least to me from the rendering. To me, it almost looks like the spot across the street, which is an open air parking spot. So it'd be helpful to know that. I will tell you, for what it's worth, that I think it's a shame to have a 2-car parking spot fronting onto Delancey Street there. And so my second question was, this is really the turning radius problem is a function of the fact that you want to put 2 cars there. And most of the other houses along Beauvier Street have 1 car parked behind them. Some have 2, but most have 1. Has any consideration been given to just frankly putting a 1-car spot that pulls onto Beauvier Street?
Good evening here. The type of home that we're looking to build here attracts a buyer that requires 2-car parking. I'd also suggest that if you go up the block, and my office manages many of the multifamilies that are immediately to our south, you've got 2, 3, 4-car parking, tandem parking. This is a much lighter sort of parking centric plan than would otherwise exist there. I certainly appreciate the point you're making here, but we would not pursue this project with only 1-car parking here. It would just be inconsistent with the target market for a home of this scale.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the committee? I mean, sorry, from the
Well,
community?
what about my other question? Is this a garage or is it not? Because the rendering looks like it's not a garage, but I gather it is.
I'll let Liz answer that. I'm not smart enough.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. And you've kind of actually hit upon exactly what we're doing here. We did not want the massing of something that appeared to be a garage obscuring what is, a building from the 1865s that we're going to rebuild the rear of in keeping with 1865. So there was a garden area at the back of the property originally. We have tried to get a carport, a open area, an open gate, so that the back of the home is still visible. So it isn't a blank garage door on another blank door on Delancey. But yes, it does have coverage for these. We have very much sunk the pitched roof within it, so that from outside, as you're walking by, you will have some visibility, you'll have clarity into that area. But we very much, for aesthetics and in working with Historic Commission, thought that plopping something that looked entirely car-centric at the back of the house did not make a lot of sense. So your question is kind of what we have sought to accomplish, which is an open parking area, but we have a covered area within it that will be a lighter, delicate metal roof, as opposed to like a truss roof system that would have raised all of this even higher.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, great.
Thank you.
So I
Um,
think
i-
that
If I
is
may,
it
just very
for
quickly, and
now.
I have done the research and I'm happy to
That's fine,
provide
but
it.
I feel like we're sort of repeating, honestly, this specific area we already did discuss. It's not conforming. And we understand the design intent is to make it look a little nicer, but I think what we're hearing from the committee and the community is that it maybe isn't a necessary hardship. But I guess if you want to speak to that.
I guess and I do appreciate that. I'll be very brief. I might suggest, without calling out other property owners, that we would be the legal parking spot on South Bouvier Street on this side of Delancey. So while numerous people park back there, yeah, we are seeking to do it legally with approved zoning. And I don't want to take the time to go back. We showed you with the bollards and the turning radius. That turning radius out of out of our property onto South Bouvier does not improve if it's 1 or 2 car parking. The turning radius of the street is only the width of the street, and essentially you'd be driving entirely on the sidewalk in order to get anywhere. And that's why we went to streets early and ahead of time and got their tacit approval that they would like the parking on Delancey Street.
And just as from like an aesthetic point, we had talked about earlier, what the repercussions are of rotating the parking. And right now from this image on the left, the kind of solid brick wall, that garden wall, faces Bouvier, the smaller street. And if you were to imagine rotating the parking and having the gate on the opposite side, you'd have essentially this solid brick wall, almost like a fortress feeling wall along Delancey Street. And we thought the open gate, the light roof structure kind of opens up the backyard a little bit more and doesn't make it feel as enclosed to the rest of the public right of way.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that we're all pretty clear here. Tony, if you have anything zoning matter related, go ahead.
I just have one more thing to say. I strongly oppose this plan. And I had a plan respecting the historic qualities of this property. These guys went unannounced to me, unnotifying me to the historical committee to change it, and that's not legal. Just want to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all understand your point of view. If there's not anybody else from the community that would like to ask a question. I think that we can go ahead and close this meeting. Just looking at the chat. So, okay, everybody can look at the chat, but I think that we are closed for the full session today. Thank you very much for the thorough presentations, and you can reach out to the same committee members with a follow-up on any legal matters.
I certainly will do so tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I just asked if you could leave the meeting if you are not in the committee.
Hold on 1 second. I have to figure it out.
Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good night.
I think it's only us if I need to get.
Bye, Heather, Metzi. Goodbye, Tony.
Don't forget to stop the recording.
Yeah. Veronica, did you stop it? Oh no, here we go.
Sure, let me see if
Oh,
I
I
can.
can stop it.